This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include former Secretary of State, former Attorney General Rufus Edmisten, Chris Fitzsimon from NC Policy Watch, Becki Gray with the John Locke Foundation, and former Supreme Court Justice Bob Orr. Well, this week we're going to ask our panel to discuss recounts, redistricting, and the upcoming legislative session if we get around to it. Just 4 weeks from Inauguration Day, we still don't have the certified outcome of two statewide elections, that of the governor and state auditor, as of the time of this taping. We want to discuss them, but first we want to talk about this week's breaking news from a federal court demanding legislative districts be redrawn and new legislative districts be held next year. Earlier this year, a three-judge federal panel ruled that 28 legislative districts were surgically drawn along racial lines and ordered new districts be redrawn. With the November elections just weeks away, the court allowed that the current districts would be used this year, but they ordered new districts be drawn next year. Well, this past week, the court expanded that decision to say that the new legislative elections would also be required in 2017. Bob Orr, legislative leaders had wanted to wait until the 2018 elections to put the new districts into place, but this court decision sets a March 15th deadline for drawing the districts, late summer primaries, and a new legislative election next fall. Now, Republicans are appealing what they call a politically motivated court decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. What are their chances of prevailing?
Well, I don't think they have a very good chance of getting the 2017 elections postponed. With this caveat, the U.S. Supreme Court is hearing the North Carolina case involving the congressional districts with the same racial gerrymandering issue present. So a fairly quick decision by the U.S. Supreme Court might very well tip everybody off as to how these other cases are going to play out.
But Rufus, let's look at this from a practical point of view. The U.S. Supreme Court is split 4-4 between Republicans and Democrats. Isn't it likely that either this court is going to have a split or tie vote, which again remands it back to the verdict of the federal court, or affirm the three-judge panel?
Well, in my experience, Tom, I've found that federal courts seem to want, in many cases, to uphold the reasoning of their federal brethren in all the courts. I don't know whether Bob will agree with that or not, but I looked at the notion of having a primary. In the summer years, I went through one of those one time. You want to talk about an abysmal turnout.
Well, we had one this past year. Nobody showed up.
Nobody showed up.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that I will agree totally with my friend, Associate Justice Bob here, that nothing's going to change on it. They're going to go through the election. And I know that we're all concerned about what do they have to do in that. And I know that Becki's got a lot to say about it.
I was going to ask Becki, there are 28 legislative districts that were declared invalid. How many legislative districts out of the 170 seats, how many of the districts will probably be changed as a result of this?
Well, of course, we won't know until they actually get in that and start running the numbers. And I think it's important to note, too, that the distribution of the population will be based on the 2010 census numbers, because that's the most current one, which kind of throws another glitch into this because of the changing demographics in North Carolina. But we won't know until we get into it. What the maps look like, most of those districts that have to be redone are on the eastern part of the state. There's a few in Mecklenburg County, a few in Guilford County. So it looks like the western part of the state could remain pretty much the way that it is. But when you get into Mecklenburg County and trying to shift those districts around, and again,
so some of these could be
part,
one-term legislators.
Absolutely.
Chris, let me move to you. The U.S. Supreme Court, as Justice Orr said, is set to hear the appeals on the congressional districts beginning tomorrow. What can we expect there? the legislature came back and redrew these districts, are they going to affirm the new districts or
I don't know. I mean, I do think that it's clear that a lot of people don't know what the standard is for how packing districts, what the percentage of minority voters is permissible and what's not. And I think most people want some clarity from the court. I'm not sure we'll get it in this case and from this divided court, but I do think it's important to point out when the Republicans say this was a political decision, one of the signers, one of the judges who decided this was Judge Schroeder, who's a conservative judge appointed by a Republican who actually upheld the voter ID law that the legislature passed. This was not a partisan political decision.
All right, Rufus, earlier it was reported that the legislature had spent more than $10.5 million in legal fees trying to defend laws that they had passed, much of which circumvented the Attorney General's office. Was this because they don't trust Roy Cooper? Or is this just a new trend we can expect to see?
Well, Tom, I would first say that this is what I would consider a lawyer's relief election cycle. There have been a lot of lawyers making a lot of money. I had questions at times when I was Attorney General. I had to use my conscience. The Attorney General is an independently elected official. He's got to use his own judgment about what's constitutional and what's not. And I don't fault Roy Cooper at all when he thinks that something will not pass constitutional muster. That's why you elect an Attorney General.
All right, Justice Orr, I got to get back to you on this subject.
I disagree with my good friend Rufus.
Go ahead, I'll give you 20 seconds to disagree.
Pursuant to the Constitution, the Attorney General duties are prescribed by the General Assembly. His duties include representing the state in all litigation. If there is an inherent conflict, and I'm not sure running for governor is an appropriate conflict, then the Attorney General's office should be
Well, does that then give the
state.
legislature the prerogative of being able to circumvent the Attorney General if they don't like his actions?
I think there is authority to hire outside counsel. You have to jump through certain hoops in order to do it. And sometimes you just need expertise outside of
So the Attorney General's not really the state's lawyer?
No, the Attorney General is the state's lawyer, but the client can choose to change. Remember, he's the lawyer, the state is the client, whoever the state may be, the General Assembly, the governor.
All right, I want to move on to another
There's
subject.
a lot of common law, Tom, that says that the Attorney General is the attorney for the people.
All right, I want to move on to another subject. On November 8th, Election Day, our state Supreme Court decided that they were going to be calling in retired Supreme Court justices to help them in adjudicating certain cases, supposedly to eliminate potential tie votes. I'd like your comments on that.
This is much to do about nothing. It was a well-intentioned effort anticipating in a hotly contested election in which one of the justices was a participant, Bob Edmonds, that you could have a split on the court and not be able to rule quickly and effectively on an important election issue. But keep in mind, if this had come up during the summer instead of an election cycle, most people wouldn't give any thought to it because a 3-3 vote does nothing to establish
But don't you
precedent.
find it a little interesting that it was done November 8th, Election Day?
The timing is strange, but I think it's the realization that Justice Edmonds would have to recuse himself on any election question, and that left the possibility of...
Do you think they got the authority to do that?
Any other court cases we ought to be thinking about and talking about while we're talking about courts?
I just want to mention two things about the order on the legislative districts that I thought were interesting. One was the court recognizes that there's going to be a low turnout for that primary election and probably the main election as well, and they don't care. They said it was okay. The other thing is they have changed the residency requirement for legislative candidates for this new election, if we have it, that they just have to live in the district on election day. So depending on how these districts are redrawn, we may see a lot of last-minute apartment rentals come right before the election of some of those incumbents.
Well, we thank you for watching NC Spin on the air or on YouTube. Here's a reminder, there's much more on our website, ncspin.com, or NC Spin on Facebook. You'll find video footage not seen anywhere else, perspective pieces from our panel, my weekly column, and you can sign up for our free weekly email newsletter, Spin Cycle. Get more balanced debate from the Old North State on ncspin.com, NC Spin on Facebook, or on Twitter at NC Spin Tweets. And after these messages, the new governor is... Stay tuned.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
The slogan on our family farm is growing the next generation. It means using innovative technology to conserve water and increase yields. It embodies our passion for providing food and fiber for our neighbors near and far. It represents our desire to take care of our employees, our land, and to leave a better place for our children. Farm life isn't easy, but it's a good life, and I love what I do.
I help educate and inspire visually impaired students to strive for a brighter future.
I make sure visitors to the North Carolina Zoo take a walk on the wild side.
And I make sure that the fuel you buy is a quality product from pipeline to pump.
I support small businesses in North Carolina by matching them with hard-working, well-trained employees.
I make sure the roads you drive on are safe.
Scenic, the one voice speaking in support of the men and women who are making North Carolina great.
We now return to NC Spin.
I have to tell you, this is one of those weeks when I wish we were doing live television. At the time that this show has been recorded, we still don't know the certified outcome of 2 statewide elections and several legislative races. Attorney General Roy Cooper hovered around a 10,000 vote lead over Governor Pat McCrory, but with charges of voter irregularities and miscounts, the State Board of Elections during midweek ordered the Durham County Board of Elections to do a recount of some 95,000 votes. Now, supposedly, the State Board was to certify the outcomes December 15th, but there's questioning whether this is going to be realistic. Rufus, it appears the 2 counties that were holding this whole thing up primarily were Bladen County and Durham counties. The 90,000 votes that the voting machines were unable to accurately report had to use backup tapes to tally the votes. We've also have the federal lawsuit by the Civitas Center for Law and Freedom requesting a restraining order for prohibiting the counting of same-day voting ballots. As a former Attorney General, I'd like your comments as to how the State Board of Elections is functioned during this, how the Durham County Board of Elections has functioned during this, and so far as the 2 candidates are concerned.
Was it Alice in Wonderland that said this gets curiouser and curiouser?
Yes.
I believe it was. First of all, I understand that the State Board of Elections has said it will be counted in Durham by machines. Well, it's my understanding also that the IT specialist in the State Board of Elections said that there's nothing wrong with those machines. So I don't know what you have there. I don't think Bladen County plays much in this at all. And at some point, there has to be some finality. And I think we're going to see this sooner than later.
One of the things that's interesting to me in all of this, Becki, is that both the State Board of Elections and all 100 county boards of elections are dominated by Republican appointees. Essentially, what I think I'm getting from the governor's office and from others is Republicans aren't trusting Republicans to do the fair and right thing. Is that it?
Well, I mean, as we've watched this unfold and seen many of these county boards of elections come together and decide what to do about some irregularities or questions or protests that have happened, I think that they're considering the evidence, looking at things very carefully. You know, in many cases, putting politics aside, you know, with this, to really look at it, to think that everybody's intent is to ensure the integrity of this election, and that in the governor's race and some of these other very close races, that whoever wins it, they've won fair and square, and that people feel like that our elections mean something.
Bob, the state board wanted to hire an outside law firm to help oversee this, and pick the firm of Brooks Pierce, McClendon, from Greensboro, and Bob Stevens, the governor's attorney, just vetoed that, saying that he didn't think they were impartial. What's your response?
Well, I don't think that's what Bob Stevens said. I think they approved Tom Zyko, a former employee of Roy Cooper, to represent the state board. I don't know you needed 5 lawyers, you know, to go in and defend against the Civitas suit. And Charles Marshall, who's an outstanding lawyer and very knowledgeable, would have been a fine hire. But the fact that the head of Roy Cooper's transition team is one of the senior partners in the firm,
Jimmy Phillips,
Jimmy, a great guy and a great lawyer, but I'm not sure that's who I would want if I was the McCrory
Chris, for the last several weeks, Democrats have been begging Pat McCrory to just concede the election and give it up, saying that the lead is insurmountable. But if you were running for governor and the election was this close, wouldn't you insist on a recount before you concede?
Well, first of all, I'd ask for a recount if I could, if the votes were less than 10,000. I do think the State Board of Elections made a mistake. As Rufus is right, the person who testified at the local board about the machines didn't seem the problem. The votes just came in late because they had to go to the backup tape. But here's something really important. I'll tell you what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't accuse people of being felons with no evidence at all. I wouldn't walk into a Board of Elections and say a 101-year-old veteran in a convalescent home in Winston-Salem voted illegally. Wait a minute, I'm not finished, because you can right now, well, okay, that's good. That's the first time I've had a chance to talk all night, by the way. It is too. It is actually. You can go and you can Google somebody's name now, and it comes up accused of a felony. And the McCrory administration was very sloppy, and they really embarrassed themselves, I think.
Are you finished?
Yes, I am.
All right. Becki, Republicans are criticizing Roy Cooper for setting up a transition team. Cooper's saying, hey, wait a minute, the inauguration day is 5 weeks away, and I got to get started in this process.
I think Roy Cooper is exactly right. I think he's doing the right thing. On day one, and actually it's not an inauguration, it's January 1. Whoever is the new governor, whoever's the governor will assume that, and they need to govern on that day. I think he's doing absolutely the right thing, but I will say too that I think Pat McCrory has done the right thing in going back and ensuring that every qualified vote is counted and the vote totals reflect a real election.
Bob, I got to bring up Article 6 in Section 5 in the Constitution, because under this article, there's some suggestion the legislature might ultimately step in and decide this election. It says, a contested election for any office established by Article 3 of this Constitution shall be determined by joint ballot of both houses of the General Assembly in the manner prescribed by law. What are the chances you think the legislature might step in here?
Well, I think it has to be the candidate that steps in, and I don't understand why the McCrory campaign and Chuck Stuber, the auditor candidate, haven't already invoked it, just as June Atkinson did in 2004. And the rules were set by the Democrats. They wrote the laws, and frankly, if you believe that there were significant numbers of votes cast in this election that impacted the outcome and they weren't proper or legal votes, then that's the remedy that the governor should
But Chris,
pursue.
doesn't this come down to that they could vote for whoever they just preferred to vote for and certify them?
I think there's very little appetite to do that. And the June Atkinson case, there were several thousand votes that were lost. Nobody's alleging that in this case. In fact, the votes are really clear. They're just going to recount them in Durham County. And I don't think there's any question Roy Cooper is going to be the next governor.
All right.
June Atkinson had a good lawyer. This man right here.
Not in that case, though.
Okay, a little back and forth here. After these messages, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the 2017 legislative session.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception, keeping electricity affordable. That's the power of your co-op membership. Learn more at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
You sleep on concrete till your body get immune to concrete.
My mom got my brother and I up and said, come on, we're leaving.
I became homeless in the beginning of this year.
When I was about 4 or 5 years old, our house caught fire.
I used to see my brother. If he see me, he'd turn and go the other direction.
We did the only thing that we could think of, and we went to a Salvation Army shelter.
You know, we don't have this, like, what's your background look like? We just say, what do you need?
I remember the man from the Salvation Army coming down with a box of clothes.
The Salvation Army officer bought my brother and I an ice cream cone.
Last week, my brother walked up to me, and he just started a conversation.
Today I've given my life to the Salvation Army because I remember what somebody did for me, my brother, and my mom over 30 years ago.
The Salvation Army for me means hope.
Compassion.
Family.
Support.
We now return to NC Spin.
We've been so focused on outcomes of several elections, we haven't looked ahead to the 2017 session of the General Assembly. We'd like our panel to comment on what we might expect to happen in the so-called long session that convenes Wednesday, January 11th. Becki, due to several retirements of key legislative leaders, let's start by looking at who's going to be playing key roles. Subject to formal votes, it appears House Speaker Tim Moore will return. Senate President Pro Tem Phil Berger will once again lead the Senate. What does this tell you about what we can expect from leadership this session?
Well, I think it's clear. I mean, they have said what they're going to do. In the last couple of years, many of the reforms that they've put into place, Tom, are actually scheduled to go into effect over the next year or two. So as far as tax reform, I think we're probably going to not see a whole lot of changes there. We may see some tinkering a little bit with it, but the income tax is scheduled to go down in 2017. The zero tax bracket will go up. I think that they will continue to keep spending, keep the growth of state government under the rate of inflation and population, because it's what they've done. You know, when you look at what they've done, you can very much see where they're going, and I think it's going to be focusing on keeping the momentum of the economic recovery and the strength of the economy in North Carolina
Rufus,
going.
I'd like to ask you, Governor Pat McCrory didn't have best of relationships with the legislature, particularly the Senate.
No kidding.
What's your expectations so far as Roy Cooper, assuming that he goes on to become our new governor?
Well, you'll have a lot of vetoes. You'll have those vetoes being overridden. And secondly, I think Cooper has a better relationship with some of the legislators in the Republican Party than did Governor McCrory. And I agree with Becki. I think the Republicans in charge promised the people that they would do conservative government, and they've kept that promise. And I think that's what you'll see over and over, and mainly knocking down rules and regulations that bureaucrats have made.
Chris, one of the key issues always discussed in the legislature is education. Now, with assuming again Roy Cooper becomes governor, he'll appoint a new state board of education. We've got a new superintendent of public instruction. What are you expecting to see so far as education
well, I think that
trends?
I think the General Assembly and Governor Cooper have very different visions of the voucher program, for example, maybe loosening funding for charters, but the General Assembly obviously has a veto-proof majority. We'll see where the superintendent comes down. What I hope they'll do is confirm Governor Cooper's, if he is the governor, his appointments to the state board. Remember, Purdue's last 2 years, they refused to appoint her.
There were vacancies.
And they made McCrory wait 2 years for some vacancies, so I hope they do that.
Bob, we're talking about education with Judge Howdy Manning, retired from the Leandro case. That opens up another aspect of what's going to happen so far as judicial and K-12 public education in North Carolina. What impact do you think that's going to have?
I think this is going to be a tumultuous period for public education. You have a new young superintendent of public instruction in Mark Johnson. You've got, if Roy Cooper is the governor, you're going to have a transitioning state board of education. The legislature is going to be pursuing their agenda. In Washington, you've got a whole different wild card. So I think those who are big advocates of public education, the public school system, need to be concerned.
Any predictions as far as Medicaid, certificate of need, deregulation of state licensing and boards?
The most perplexing problem we have right now is what to do about Medicaid. And it looks like that we'll be getting grants to states rather than
block
if
grants.
They have their way block grants.
And
in North Carolina, we don't have a plan yet. We're 2 years away from even knowing what we're going to do.
I think a lot of that, Tom, will depend on what happens at the federal level. I've heard President-elect Trump talk about certificate of need, what the new health care plan under Obamacare and changes in health care, I think will greatly affect what happens here in North Carolina.
All right, after these messages, we're going to ask the panel to tell us something we don't know.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
It's a fact. Patients who receive care in the medical home from a trusted family physician reduce healthcare costs through prevention, early detection, and affordable management of high-cost chronic diseases.
Every dollar invested in healthcare matters. Let's invest them wisely, building on North Carolina's medical home model. Better health begins with a medical home, a trusted family physician, the best return on our healthcare investment. Learn about the importance of medical homes at OurNCHealthcare.com. NCSpend.com.
I help educate and inspire visually impaired students to strive for a brighter future.
I make sure visitors to the North Carolina Zoo take a walk on the wild side.
And I make sure that the fuel you buy is a quality product from pipeline to pump.
I support small businesses in North Carolina by matching them with hard-working, well-trained employees.
I make sure the roads you drive on are safe.
Scenic, the one voice speaking in support of the men and women who are making North Carolina great.
We now return to NC Spend.
Now we come around to our favorite part of the show when we ask the panelists, tell us something we don't know. They choose the topic and they can sound off. Chris, we'll start with you.
President-elect Trump promised to keep a carrier plant from leaving Indiana and save thousands of jobs to keep them in the United States. Well, it turns out 1,300 of those jobs are going to Mexico, 800 are staying in Indiana, but 100 that were supposed to come to Charlotte are not coming to Charlotte. And the solution he worked out was to get the state of Indiana to give the company $700,000 a year not to move the jobs. He talked them into doing that. So kind of interesting for a president elected by conservatives. North Carolina's losing jobs, and a company in Indiana is giving $700,000 a year of taxpayer money.
Interesting. I had not heard that. Rufus, tell us something we don't know.
This sounds sort of Pollyannish, but I think that this election showed us that people have to learn that other people have views that they really hold dear. I think that we're in a very dangerous time in our nation when you set neighbor against neighbor, family member against family members. And I would hope that people will start acting civil in elections, and that starts with the campaigners too. And we've got to understand that other people have views that are different of ours, and don't condemn them and attack them because of their views.
We had a political-free Thanksgiving among our family members this past week.
Some of us went off down to Pinehurst and lived like a one-percenter for 2 or 3 days.
Bob Orr, tell us something we don't know.
Well, the new superintendent of public instruction, Mark Johnson, is a 33-year-old lawyer from Winston-Salem. He was 2 years as a teacher and has served 2 years on the Forsyth County Board of Education. So a lot of folks said he doesn't have a lot of experience in public education in North Carolina, but he knows a lot about the North Carolina Constitution because he was a student of mine at UNC School of Law.
Aha. All right, Becki Gray, tell us something we don't know.
We've been talking a lot today about lawsuits and, all of these lawsuits that have been filed. Well, it's worse than we even thought. There was a fella in California who ate a blueberry-filled Krispy Kreme donut and is now suing Krispy Kreme because he was shocked to learn there were no real blueberries in that donut. So I think this is a warning. This is a warning to all of us. Krispy Kreme's a great North Carolina company. We've had great economic growth in North Carolina, 400,000 net new jobs since 2013. We're rolling back taxes. We're doing away with regulations.
These two lawyers are sitting over here grinning like Cheshire cats because they know it means work for them.
Well, don't mess with our Krispy Kreme donut.
That's it. Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback, and read my weekly column, visit our website, ncspend.com, or catch NC Spend on Facebook. And join us next week when we'll have more balanced debate for the Old North State. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.